Hi guys, and welcome back to today's video. As I mentioned in my last vest video, I had another vest in mind that looks like this. It has a more higher neckline and is longer and the bottom is flared. So that's what we're going to make today. This is a two-part series video and this is the second part. In the first part I already showed you my whole pattern making process, so if you're interested in that you can go ahead and watch the video too. I will also link it in the description. And yeah, so today's video will be all about the sewing part. The sewing pattern for the first vest video I made is up and available on my Etsy store. I will also put a link down below. And for this vest I'm also grading the pattern and all that stuff, but I'm not sure if it will be uploaded at the same time as I upload the video. Let's see. But I will also write it down once it's available. And if you're new here, hi, I'm Christina, a fashion design student, and I do sewing and design videos. So let's get ahead and start sewing. I also wanted to show you what kind of materials I'm using. It's this shiny wool fabric, and yeah, I think it also suits the whole capsule wardrobe idea that I had. I can also talk about it later in this video. And I will also do matching pants for it, so the next video is a pants video. Okay, that's the main fabric, and for the lining I had a similar one in brown at home. It's a bit lighter, but I think it will still work, so that's fine. Yeah, I just wanted to use what I have at home, because I already talked about it in the first vest video. The whole idea is to create my own kind of capsule wardrobe, but for fashion people, as I called it. And the vests are part of layering pieces. I think every capsule wardrobe should also have layering pieces. I don't know why most of the capsulists don't include layering, but it's also just my idea of a capsule wardrobe for fashion people that like this whole, I would say, dark academia and old money aesthetic. That's the main approach I have to make more clothes in this direction. And one rule is that I only use stuff that I have at home, because I have so much fabrics. I can show you all my fabrics in a second. I think that's interesting too, to see. It's super messy up here, so ignore this part please. But I have all my fabrics laying right here. And I also try to make little groups, so I put everything that is greenish blue in this right here, and also matching linings. I also just put them next to the main fabric, so I can just grab something that is already matching. And I also have some fabrics right here. So that's basically what I am trying to use for this whole series, I guess, because I think it's just more sustainable to use fabrics that you already have at home. But of course I also go fabric shopping from time to time, but I try to only shop for fabrics where I already know that I really want to make a specific clothing piece where I know I just don't have a matching fabric for it. So yeah, that's my approach. First thing I'm going to do is to cut everything out. I need to figure out what kind of pattern piece needs interfacing to, because I think for this kind of fabric I will use interfacing. Yeah, I will show you in a second. If you're working with a shiny material, make sure to mark the direction how you placed your pattern pieces. And I also mark it above the pattern pieces, so I know how I need to place the pattern pieces for my pants for the next time I'm going to use this fabric. I'm back with all the pieces that I did cut out. I just quickly wanted to show you how I prepared everything. So everything you're seeing right now are the outer pieces of the vest. As you can see, I added some bias tape to the armhole. It's this one that I used. A small seam stitched on the bias tape. I used it for the armhole and also for the neckline, because the fabric is a bit stretchy and I don't want the armhole or the neckline to stretch out. That's why I added that. And also for the front I added a different kind of bias tape. It's more like interfacing. It also has very small, not seams or stitches or anything, but maybe you can see right now. I added that to the center front where the buttons and buttonholes belong to. That's for the outer part. And I also added interfacing to the facing pieces I used interfacing that is white, but I can suggest to use a darker one, especially working with dark fabrics. So that's on every facing, but also on the back belt pieces and the pocket piece. So that's what we need interfacing for. Okay, those are all the pieces. We start with the outer part first. First, I'm going to work on the back pieces, and I'm going ahead and close the center bag. And next thing we need to do before we can close the dividing seam in the back is to prepare the back belt pieces. Okay, so I'm just going to stitch around here. We can go ahead and sandwich in the belt. I also made sure while pressing the belt pieces that the seam is laying towards one side. So we have one pretty side once it's sewn in. And since we have a little curve in the dividing seam, I'm just making sure that the belt piece is laying in a 90-degree angle to the back seam. And place it right where the notches are. And just pin it away like that so it doesn't bother me. Because now we are going to close the dividing seams and make sure to match it up with the notches. Now we can continue to work on the front. For the front we have a dividing seam, but we also need to place the pockets in first. The fabric is super dark, so I'm actually not sure if you're able to see every seam that I did, but I just wanted to show you that's the first pocket that I've done off camera, and now I'm going to show you how to do it on the other side. But basically that's the front and that's the back, and that's why we also needed a way bigger lining for the pocket, because I already sewed it on to the seam allowance of the dividing seam and side seam, so the pocket lays flat and is sandwiched into the seams later on. So yeah, you will always have a nice pocket from the inside and it's not moving weirdly while wearing. So that's what we are going to do, and I'm showing it to you on the other side. Now we need our welt, our fake welt as I call it, because you actually don't need to cut into the fabric because we have a seam right here. You can use the pocket of course, so it's not really a fake welt pocket, but I mean by fake that you don't need to cut into the fabric like in the first vest I showed you. This version is way easier. Okay, we start by pressing the welt into the half, and then I'm going to stitch 0.9 centimeters from the edge, so it's just laying flat and it's not opening up. Now we need to sew on the welt part to the bottom part of the side piece. That means I'm just pinning the raw edges next to each other. There are currently no notches at my pocket piece, but I think I'll include it for you. But basically you just need to place it right in the middle, because you can see it's a bit longer, but we need that later on, the length. So yeah, I'm going ahead and pin that, and then I'm just sewing a straight stitch at 1 centimeter. Okay, that's attached, and don't press it yet because now we need to add the lining for the pocket, and I always do it just by placing it how it's supposed to lay in the end, like that. So I know in the end it needs to lay like that. That's also how I know which side needs to be sewn on to the seam allowance at the welt, just placing it right sides together. I'm going ahead and try to match with the seam I did before. Okay, that's how it looks like now. And you can also go ahead and press it on both sides so it lays a bit more flat. Okay, now it looks nice and clean, and the last thing we need to do is to sew on the other side to the upper part of the side front piece. And I do the same thing, I just open it up, and that's how I know that I need to sew it on right here. And again, I'm just trying to place it in the middle, but now I'm going to pin it this way because I need to check if the lines match up. I'll show you in a second, like that, and then we put it back. And here you can maybe tell there is also a notch right here and right here, and that's where the welt belongs. So I place the upper part of the welt against the notches, and now once you lay it flat, you can already tell here it's moving a bit, but that's fine for the lining. You can always press it flat again. The important part is that the lines match up right here, and then you know you pinned it the right way. So I'm going ahead and sew this piece on. And now we just need to place the welt pocket against the notches right here and there. I also use a pin right here. Now we are going to close the side seams of the pocket by simply stitching into the seam allowance of the bottom part right here. And this way we secure the pocket too. You can also pin it so it won't move as much, and that's why we needed the pocket to be a bit bigger, so it's stitched into the seam allowance of this piece right here. Okay, this is how it looks like now. I stitched it on this side and this side, and here you can see it too. I still need to make the pocket bigger right here, as you can see. And in the next step you can simply cut away all the excess right here. And now both pockets are done. That means in the next step we can continue closing the front pieces. So I'm going ahead and close the dividing seams. The front pieces are done. That's how they look like now. I did cut into the seam allowance here at the bust area, and I just pressed the seams open right here and on the bottom. But for the pocket part, since it's sewn into the dividing seam, it's a bit trickier. At this point you cannot press it open that nicely because it wants to lay towards the center front. That's why I ironed it towards the center front at this point. You can just simply cut from start to ending of the pocket into the seam allowance and then just press it the other way around. So yeah, that's how it looks like. And the next step for the outer part is to close the shoulder seams for front and back. So I'm taking my back piece again, and you can simply lay the pieces on top and pin at the shoulders. Okay, then I go ahead and close the shoulders and I press them open, and I also leave the side seams open for now. We close those as a last step. I'm going to work on the back pieces first. Those are all the lining pieces and facing pieces for the back. And first we need to sew the center back of the lining piece. Just one tip if you're pressing lining fabric. The first thing that you need to do before pressing seams open is to press it flat, because there is so much tension on your thread while sewing. It creates those little waves in the fabric. That's totally normal, but you need to iron it flat. You can also pull a little bit. Now it looks how it's supposed to be, and now you can easily press the seam open. It's way easier than going ahead and do it right away. Always press it flat first. That's all for the back lining. And in the next step we need to sew on the facing pieces. Make sure that you have all the notches so we can place the facing to the lining pieces. This part is a bit trickier, but simply pin it starting from the center back. That's the easiest way. Then I go ahead and pin the next notch, and I'm going to pin the shoulder. Same for the other side. That's how it looks like, and again I'm going to sew from the facing. And always check on the other side if it looks good or if some folds accidentally were sewn into the seam, but that looks good. And now you can go ahead and press this seam flat. And now is also a good time to add the label, if you have one, right here in the middle of the facing. Something like that. Of course, we also need to add the bottom facing too. That means I'm going to pin this part right here, matching the center back notch. And I'm also going to sew the bottom facing for the side back pieces and also match up the notches. There's also one in the middle. Okay, I'll do that and I will be ready. Of course, we also need to close the dividing seams. So that's the next step. The back is finished. Now we can continue with the front facing and lining. Oh yeah, one more thing before I forget to mention. I ironed the seam allowance of the dividing seams towards the center back because we ironed it to the side seams for the outer part, and so it won't be that bulky if you do it the opposite way. That's just one tip I can give to you. I currently do have a seam at the waistline right here, but that's actually not necessary. I will change that later on. But for now I need to close these pieces right here first, and then I need to sew on the facing for the hemline right here for both sides, and after that you can simply go ahead and close the dividing seam, and the lining for the front is done. That's how the front pieces look like right now. And now we are going to close the shoulder seams. Place the front pieces like that and close the shoulder seams, and remember to keep the side seams open. And now we are finished with the lining. Next step is to sew the lining to the outer part. That means you can place the outer part like this, then you just go ahead and place the lining on top, also right sides together like that. And then we are going to pin everything except for the side seams. We leave every side seam open, so no pins here or here. That means I am pinning the hem of the bag. And I move on to the armhole. Okay, and once we pinned the armhole, we can also pin the front pieces right here. Again, remember to leave the side seam open. And maybe you will also notice that you need to stretch the facing a bit so it fits the outer part of the vest. That's how it's supposed to be. I always construct the facing a bit shorter and also the lining so it will lay on the inside and stay there instead of pulling towards the outside of your garment. And in case you still have the feeling it could be a bit smaller, you can always pull it a bit more outwards, but yeah, in this case it should be fine. And we continue to pin the neckline and move on with the other front piece and with the other armhole too. I'm back with the sewn piece. I sewed all the way around the edges where I pinned. And once again, I left the side seams open on every side, and that's how it looks like right now. I can also recommend to check if you actually matched up with the shoulders. Always take a look so it looks also neat on the inside once everything is turned around. Alright, and then we are going ahead and cut away the seam allowances. For the front pieces, I'm going to cut it to about 0.7 centimeters. For the neckline, I'm going to clip into the seam allowance first. But I'm also going to trim it, and I'm leaving about maybe 0.3 centimeters-ish. Just leave enough so the edges won't fray that much. I do about the same amount at the armholes. Before I go ahead and press everything, I'm actually going to understitch first. That means I am grabbing into the inside, and understitching means that you are facing the seam allowance towards the facing and you're stitching next to the seam line just a few millimeters and stitch on the facing side. We do that so in the end the facing is facing towards the inside. I'm always making sure that my seam allowance is facing towards the facing. I'm just putting my hand underneath the whole thing, and you can simply stretch the seam seam just a bit and sew along this line, but a few millimeters next to it. After that you can press this whole thing way easier. I do that for both sides of the front and also for the hem of the back piece. I'm not going to understitch the armhole or the neckline. That's totally fine. I just go ahead and press everything. So I'm just grabbing inside the side seam of the back. Wait, I pull it out a bit more. And then we can go ahead and press everything flat. I just noticed while pressing the armhole part that I think I never mentioned this step in particular. When ironing armhole, you always need to keep the shape of the armhole. Please never stop stretching it out. I do that by laying the front piece flat, keeping the shape of the armhole, how it's supposed to be, basically like the pattern piece. And then I'm going ahead and press it like that. Something like that. Always keep the curves. Okay, once everything is pressed, it looks like that. Very nice and clean. And now we can continue to close the side seams. You can start with the side you like. It doesn't matter that much. I always start with the left side of the garment, and I start by pinning the outer part to the other outer part, right sides together. And you should also see notches and match up with the notches too. Okay, once you pinned this outer part of the vest, you can go back to the front like that. And you can go ahead and grab into this side of the back piece, grab the thing that you pinned and pull it towards you, because this way you can now start to pin the lining to in a circle. Okay, everything is pinned and now we can go ahead and sew this part. When sewing this part, sew on the inside of the circle. That's easier to handle under the sewing machine. Okay, and that's done, and you can just simply pull it out again, and you can go ahead and iron the side seam. One side seam is closed. And now let me show you how to do it for the other side. It's basically the same except for the step of turning it through the side seam, because of course now we closed every seam except for this one. So I'm going ahead and pin the outer part of the vest again, right sides together. Once you pinned the outer part of the vest, you can also start pinning the facing and lining as much as you can, but you will notice that you are not able to pin all the way through. But that's fine, we just leave an opening in the lining. That's all I can do for now. I'm left with this opening, and now I need to pull it out as much as I can and try to sew this under the sewing machine. Okay, and once I turn everything back, it looks like that. And that's the opening we are left with in the lining. First, I also need to iron the side seams and before closing this part. And you could also press the seam allowance at the opening, and then you could stitch along this line. Since it's laying on the inside of your garment, you won't see the stitching line, but I think I am going ahead and hand sew this opening close. Once you closed the side seam, we can go ahead and continue with the buttonholes and buttons. And for that I'm taking my pattern and I mark the button positions. If you're getting the pattern in your pattern, it will look more nicer than that. Okay, and I always do the buttonholes first. I'm going to be on the right side of your garment in the front, and I'm just placing this side nice and flat on my table. And then I'm going ahead and take my pattern and place it on top and mark the button positions. And I do that by using a vanishing chalk. So I marked my positions like that. And then I'm marking where the center front is. I'm measuring it on the pattern and it's 1.5. So I'm also going to mark 1.5 from the edge in the front piece. And those are the positions where the button should be. Okay, so if you marked this position, you can go ahead and do the buttonholes with your domestic sewing machine. I don't have one, that's why I need to do them by hand. I have a whole guide or tutorial on making buttonholes. You can go ahead and watch those if you want to hand sew them too. But yeah, I will do that off camera, and the last step is to sew the buttons on, and then we are finished. Okay guys, that's it for today's video. I hope you liked it. If you want to sew this vest too, you can go ahead and check out the pattern. It's the first link in the description. In the next video we are going to make matching pants for this vest. And other than that, please let me know what else you want to see. And yeah, you can also go ahead and follow me on Instagram and TikTok for more content and behind the scenes. If you like this video, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe, and I hope we see each other next time. Bye!